Okay. Oh, do you mind enabling my screen share? I think I'll be able to screen share after that.
I'll try to do this.
Thank you.
Um, Maybe now?
Okay, perfect.
Yep.
So would you like me to still start in about 4 minutes, or should...
No, just you can start already. Yep. You
Okay.
can share you can already share your screen and you can start. Yep.
Okay, wonderful. Well, first, I just wanted to say thank you to Sophia and colleagues and to all of you for your patience here. And I'm very deeply sorry for the time zone conversion. I did not mean to leave any of you waiting for me, and it's a total honor to have the chance to work with you all and share some information about Creative Commons licensing, the context and copyright, and take your questions. So I really appreciate the questions that you shared in advance. I was just looking at them this morning. I will do my best to answer all of them at the end of the chat. So that means I might try to rush through some of the content in the presentation a little bit more quickly than normal. But you will have lots of information in the notes of the slides, which you'll have access to following the presentation. So thank you again, and it is a total honor to be here. My name is Jennryn Wetzler, and I'm the Director of Learning and Training at Creative Commons. I've been at Creative Commons for over 8 years, and it's one of my favorite things to do, getting the chance to engage with colleagues in the field around the world who are implementing Creative Commons licenses and recommended practices and opening access to knowledge and culture. So I really am glad that we have the chance to connect today. And with that, I will start screen sharing again. And I want to make this as useful to you all as possible. So if there's a question that you might have during the presentation, please don't hesitate to unmute your microphone and ask. I don't think I can see the chat right now. Let me just see if I can pull that out. Okay. Or you can type a question in the chat and I'll try my best to
I
monitor.
will, yeah, I will be just if there is a question in the chat, I will translate to you or just read it for you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Okay, so just very briefly, I wanted to share, if you are not familiar with Creative Commons, we're a global nonprofit. We've been around for about 25 years now. This is our anniversary year. And we support this online infrastructure that makes the public commons possible. So, what I mean by the public commons is our collections of free and available shared resources that are essential for us to collectively address some of our world's most pressing challenges in terms of knowledge and cultural exchange. So ideally, we are able to work together to not just expand the commons, but protect what's in there. Make sure everyone has access to knowledge and culture in the public interest. So we are best known for our CC licenses and tools. We have 6 CC licenses, which I'll be getting into, 2 public domain tools, which give people the spectrum of choice over how they want to share their copyrighted works, or how they want to share their public domain works. So the licenses power tens of billions of works online to date. And we are not just an organization about the licenses. We also focus on broader work to advocate for open knowledge sharing, to do trainings like this and engagement with our global communities. And we aim to make a more resilient open infrastructure of sharing online. And Right now, we are in a kind of pivotal year. So, as we reflect on the previous 25 years, we're also recognizing that we're in a completely different context today than we were 25 years ago when we first created the CC licenses to address a very pivotal challenge at the time. Now, with AI, we see the way AI ingestion and AI platforms are reshaping how we as humans connect and create content, how we share and communicate. And this is a challenge that we are exploring interventions on to date. So this is kind of an exciting time for CC to not just support our licenses, but also look at options for additional tools that we might offer to community members. So I'm sure we'll have more on that in the future. But for now, let's talk about what we're going to address in this training. Excuse me. So by the end of this training, you should be able to describe the CC licenses and the legal tools and the differences between them. I don't expect you to remember everything, but I will share some really good links so you can find more information on your own if you forget some of this information. I also want you to come away with an understanding of how to apply recommended practices in open licensing. I want you to know where to go for CC licensed content and information for help. And then also, hopefully we'll have a little bit of a discussion around the successful open access publishing models, so quality open journals and international indexing. Okay. As you likely know, there are so many benefits to CC licensed content. One, first and foremost, it gives you legal certainty. It tells people how they can legally reuse copyrighted content. So the different CC licenses all work within the realm of copyright. Our public domain dedication, CC0, explains to users that the work, in as far as the creator is able to, has waived all copyright restrictions. So this kind of legal certainty is essential for scholarly publishing. CC licenses also help people adapt, translate work, and remix the work or make adaptations to the work legally and be able to share them with their scholarly communities and so on. It also helps speed up scientific progress, educational innovation, and learning and growth. So there are a lot of benefits. I won't go through all of them here. The last one I will say is that because all of our licenses require attribution, that is a credit given to the creator or licensor of a work, it helps cultivate better digital literacy skills. So being able to track the provenance of a work to the original creator is essential in today's environment where we see a lot of work that is generated and we don't know where it came from. So when you have the ability to trace it back to the verified, scholarly publisher or author, it gives more credence to the work itself. So it helps better digital literacy skills. Okay, so now let's talk really quickly about the context of CC licensing. As you all probably know, I won't belabor this, but CC licenses work within the realm of copyright law. So copyright law is one of the areas of intellectual property law that governs creative expressions. So when you think of the main pillars of intellectual property law, you have patent rights, you have trademark law, and you also have copyright. So copyright is actually present in almost everything that we do. We are constantly swimming in copyrighted content and we don't even realize it. You think of the books that you're reading or the academic research articles, sure, you understand those are under copyright or maybe CC licensed. But everything from the music you listen to the podcasts you might listen to the images in advertisements, to the movies that you watch and so on, are all layered with copyright. So it is literally on every form of creative expression, human creative expression, that we have. So copyright it provides a set of exclusive rights to the creator of a work. So the creator has the ability to prevent others from copying and adapting their work for a limited time. And by limited time, I mean it's not indefinite, but it is a period of time for protection that has an end date. That time of protection keeps getting extended, but it is ultimately it's limited. Okay, one quick note, copyright does not apply to facts or ideas. So if you think of some information that you might have in a data set, that information may not be creative and original. It may be a set of numbers that correspond to something else. It may be, a simple idea that's contained in the data set. Those individual pieces of data are not copyrightable in themselves. Only creative works of original expression are copyrightable. And in Ukraine, copyrighted works must be fixed in tangible form. So just like the US, it is spelled out in copyright law that creative works of original expression must be fixed in tangible form. That means they must be written down, they must be recorded somewhere, somehow they must be, transferable so someone else can see them in tangible form in order to receive copyright. And that copyright is automatic then. So there are no additional requirements for copyright protection other than creating that original work and fixing it in tangible form. I will say that in many countries, probably all countries, I'm not a copyright lawyer, so I'm not going to make any claims. It is best to register your work at a copyright office to make sure you have the legal protection that you might need if you are pursuing litigation. But technically speaking, you do not need to do that. You do not need any other, what we call formalities, to have copyright over your creative work. It is automatic. Okay, the other point to make is that copyright protections last a very long time. So currently, copyright protections in Ukraine last for the life of the author, the person who created the work. They say author, but it means any creator, plus an additional 70 years after their death. So let's say I create something right now, this PowerPoint presentation, for example. If I created this, it would be under my, it would be my kind of monopoly. It would be my copyright protected work for as long as I live, plus an additional 70 years after my death. And then after that copyright protection ends, the work enters the public domain. So the public domain is this kind of vast pool of human knowledge and creativity, of facts and ideas that weren't copyrightable in the first place, and copyrighted content that's expired, that's then available to everyone to use with no restrictions at all. So the public domain is essential to our shared knowledge commons on which we can build and innovate. Okay, there's a lot more information in my PowerPoint slides about objects of copyright in Ukraine and so on, but I just want to maybe get a raise of hands. Does anyone want a little bit more information on copyright, or should we turn to some CC licenses? I know I can adapt if you want to move on to CC licenses. Does anyone want more information on copyright? You can just raise your hand.
Дорогі учасники, якщо хтось хоче більше інформації про авторське право, то підніміть ручки, і пані Дженрін, вона трошки розкаже про авторське право. Якщо зразу перейти до ліцензування бажаєте, то перейдемо відразу до ліцензування. Як ви хочете?
Краще до ліцензування.
We should go to the licensing.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for translating. There's more information in my slides, so you will have access to that afterwards. Okay, as I mentioned, the public domain is this really essential commons or set of resources that we can now use because copyright protections have expired, or maybe the work was dedicated to the public domain with a CC0 dedication, or maybe it wasn't eligible for copyright in the first place. So there are a number of different reasons. I will note that previously, when certain formalities were required of copyright, and if the copyright owner did not abide by the formalities, their work would enter the public domain as well. So plenty of ways for works to get into the public domain. Okay, I'm going to skip really briefly over the limitations and exceptions and just note that there are carve-outs. There are legal reasons to freely use a work, especially for libraries, museums, and so on, with open access to visitors, and it is not infringing copyright. So you can reuse copyrighted work without breaking the law under different limitations or exceptions to copyright. Okay, why am I telling you all of this? I'm telling you this because CC licenses work within the realm of copyright. So wherever copyright applies, so too do CC licenses. And because copyright has been harmonized around the world, CC licenses are considered global or near universal licenses. There are some countries where there is unclear copyright law or no copyright law, and in those cases, it is unclear how CC licenses would apply. But in general, CC licenses are universal. Okay, so CC licenses apply only where copyright law applies. When copyright expires, so do CC licenses. I should also note that CC licenses are perpetual and irrevocable. That means as soon as you apply a CC license to your work, it is available under those terms, under the permissions you are offering the global public, no matter what. You can apply a different CC license and republish the works, but if people still find the original CC licensed work that you offered, they can abide by those terms and they are not infringing copyright. So the idea behind Creative Commons licenses was to create an easy way for creators who wanted to share their works in more kind of flexible means than traditional all rights reserved copyright, but still work within the realm of copyright law. So to do that, CC created 6 different licenses. So licenses that hopefully meet everybody's needs. So every use case possible hopefully will be captured here. CC also created 2 public domain tools, which I'll talk about in a moment. But first, I wanted to talk through what you're seeing here, the different icons associated with our licenses. As you can see, there is a commonality in all of our 6 licenses. That's the person with the circle around it. That's our attribution element. So CC BY or CC attribution is a requirement in all of our licenses. That means all of our licenses require that anyone who uses the creative work must give attribution to the creator of the work. They need credit for their work. That is not something that you waive when you CC license your work. The second element that you see here is this arrow that loops back on itself. That's our share alike element. So that's one of 4 elements in our licenses. The share alike element is interesting. It is a way to ensure that works remain in this broader, global, and public commons. So it says you can reuse this work in any way you want, but you as the kind of downstream user cannot apply additional restrictions to the work that you create based on the work with the share alike license. So for example, let's say I make music and I upload it online. I want to share it as freely as possible, but I don't want other people to reuse my music and put additional restrictions on it for others to use. Maybe I want others to make new music without any additional restrictions. I could license my work under the CC BY SA or Creative Commons Attribution Share Alike license, and that would ensure that downstream users, people who use my work, are legally required to license their works with the same or similar analogous permissions. So share alike is I think, really interesting license element that we see a lot in the educational spaces. Then we have this non-commercial element, which gets a lot of questions. I know some folks had questions in the advanced questions list, which I'm happy to discuss, that relate to non-commercial elements. So when we say non-commercial, we mean downstream users, people who use the CC licensed works, cannot intentionally make commercial gain. They cannot reuse a CC licensed work with a non-commercial element and try to make profit off of it. People get confused by the non-commercial element because some people think that it is dependent on the user rather than the use case. So this is an important distinction. It does not matter who you are or what institution you are a part of, as long as you are using a non-commercial licensed work for non-commercial purposes. So if you are, for example, a nonprofit university or a nonprofit institution, but you are using let's say, a non-commercial licensed poster for some kind of advertising campaign to garner profit for your institution, that is infringing copyright. That is infringing on the permissions the creator of that poster put forth with their CC license. So that is not allowed. But if you are a for-profit organization or an individual looking let's say you are a for-profit institution and you are using the non-commercial licensed poster to share with staff on some like internal staff communications campaign that is not intended for commercial profit, that's okay. That abides by the license permissions. So really, you have to think of the use case, not the user. The use case is what is really important with the non-commercial license element. Okay. So the next license has both the non-commercial and the share alike elements, along with our attribution element. And that means that someone is sharing their work, requiring others to CC license their work with the same terms, so the non-commercial share alike terms. And they're also requiring people who reuse their works to not make commercial profit off of their works. So that is a combination of those different elements. And then finally, we have this fourth element that's ND. So that's the equal sign with a circle around it. ND stands for no derivatives. That is one of our most restrictive license terms. No derivatives means you are welcome to reuse the works that I'm sharing, but you cannot make adaptations and share them. So it's a way to kind of preserve the, integrity of the work shared and not have anyone make any differences. And I see a question in the chat. Thank you. How can CC BY SA differ from CC BY and CSA? After all, CC BY is not commercial and SA is not commercial. So CC BY SA is not commercial by definition. Great question. So CC BY SA is not a license that weighs in on commercial use or not. You can reuse CC BY SA licenses for commercial gain. So let's say you're a researcher, you have published your research and you've licensed it CC BY SA. So you just are requiring that you get credit for your research, and you're saying that downstream users can reuse your work in any way that they want to, even commercially, as long as they share what they create with your work, their adaptation of your work, with the same terms. So they would have to license their work CC BY SA as well. It does not weigh in on the non-commercial uses of your work. If you apply CC BY and CSA, same considerations. You are telling downstream users, you are telling the public, they have to give you credit, they have to license their work with the same terms that you've licensed your work if they're reusing and adapting your work, and they're restricted from commercial use. So they can reuse your publication however they want, as long as they give you credit. They don't make profit, and they share their work with the same terms. So that, I think that's a great question. It can get a little bit confusing at first, but think of these icons or these symbols as sort of like unbundling all of the permissions that are generally held for copyright holders and granting some of the permissions to the public. So the public can reuse your copyrighted work as long as they abide by these particular rules. So if you see the rule attached that says non-commercial, they can't make commercial profit off of it. But if it's not applied there, they can. All right, hopefully that answered the question. I'm going to jump to the last license element, but please feel free to add in any other questions that come to mind. You can apply your CC BY SA content that you make. So if you make content that you are okay, that you can certainly make profit off of any of your content. You're not giving that up, no matter which license you apply. So you can intend to make profit off of anything that you publish in CC license, regardless of the license. The NC element is just about restricting others' reuse of your work. So you can apply a CC BY SA license to your commercial content, and that would mean that only you can try to make commercial gain. You would be restricting others from trying to make commercial gain off of your work. Great questions. Okay, so the no derivatives element, as I mentioned, means that people can reuse your work. They can take parts of it, look at, what's useful to them, but they can't adapt your work and share it with anybody else. So that is one of our more restrictive elements. And then the final license here is a combination of these more restrictive elements here. So our final license, or way to share your copyright permissions with the world, says, I am sharing my work. I require attribution. So I require credit being given to me. I require that no one else makes commercial gain off of my work. And I also require that no one else, let me go back to this. No one else makes an adaptation to my work and share it. I want to preserve my work in its original form and not have an adaptation made. Okay, so those are kind of the range of our 6 licenses and the permissions that they afford. All of these licenses work on the spectrum of sort of flexibility after copyright. So copyright is all rights reserved for the copyright owner. The licenses kind of vary based on the amount of flexibility or permissions granted to people to reuse works, but they exist on a spectrum. CC BY is the most flexible. CC BY and CND is the least flexible. But if you don't want to CC license your work, you can apply the public domain tool or dedication. This is CC 0. This means that you, as a creator of a work, waive your copyright restrictions in as far as you can. So you say, I want to dedicate this work to that public pool of knowledge without any copyright restrictions. So that is what we use CC 0 for. And then the public domain tool here is actually in the future, I think, going to be subsumed under our CC 0. But for right now, the C with the slash through it means that this work right here is already in the public domain worldwide. It's really hard to determine when a work is in the public domain worldwide because copyright lasts for different lengths of time in different countries. So determining when a work when its copyright has expired in every single country is a challenge. So we often see people applying the CC0 public domain tool. The C with a slash through it, our public domain mark, is less common. Okay, so you now see our 6 different tools, our 6 different licenses and our 2 public domain tools. I'm going to show you how easy it is to choose and apply a CC license. I'm going to share a link in the chat right here. And let me just click on this and see if I can open this up for us. Okay, so this is a tool that asks you a range of questions and then generates the appropriate license based on your responses. So this helps you determine what you are needing to do with your work, how you want your work to be used, and that will determine the license that is applied. And from there, it's simple. Everybody has access to this tool. There's no charge to it. All you have to do to license your work is copy and paste the license onto your work. And you can, paste the HTML code into your web editor. So it is ideally as easy as possible for creators to put the labels or the images that describe how they want to share their works on their works and then move on. So hopefully it's very easy. I'm going to just show you really quickly. Do I know which license I need? For the sake of this training, I will say no. Do I require attribution? I'll say yes. If I said no, it would dedicate my work to the public domain, but I'll say yes for here. Do I want others to use my work commercially? For right now, I suppose I'll say no, because we had a question about NC licenses in the list. Do we want to allow others to remix, adapt, or build upon the work? I'll say for right now, yes. Actually, I'll say no for right now because there's also questions about the share alike element. Confirm that the CC licensing is appropriate. So first, you do not have the authority to CC license a work if you are not the copyright owner of the work. So in some jurisdictions, and I think in Ukraine, if there is work for hire status, so if you are considered work for hire at your university or your institution, you may not own the work that you create while you are being hired. So you have to check your employment contract. But if you do own the right to CC license your work, so you own the copyright of your work, then you can say, yes, I have the authority to license my work. And then I have read and understood the terms of the license. I'll show you where you can go to do that. And I understand that CC licensing is irrevocable. So that means we can't un-CC license the work after we've set out those terms. It's like a contract with the world. You can't renege. You can't go back on the contract. Okay, so from here you see the license that popped up based on the decisions that we made. So this is the most restrictive license that we could choose, the Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives license, and this is the 4.0 version, our latest version. And there are the licensing images up top. Here's the language that will help downstream users know what you mean when you apply this license. So I would copy all of this and paste it on my academic article or otherwise. If you want to go to the license deed and read through the terms, let me see if I can click right here. Here are the human readable terms of the license. So it tells you exactly what you are free to do and what the restrictions are under the license. I just want to really quickly show you where to go. You can click on the legal code to see what is exactly described in the license in a way that lawyers will use. So this part, this layer of CC licenses is what is enforceable in court. So you can scroll down through a lot of definitions and the scope of the license and the other rights that may apply, different conditions, etc. So there are a lot of considerations that are embedded in our licenses that are important to lawyers. I'm going to just see if I can go back here. Okay. But the deed that most people see is just very simple and easy for most people to understand. You're free to share. You have to share while giving attribution. You can't make commercial gain off of it, and you can't make adaptations. Okay, and I see a comment here. It's becoming increasingly common to see works that contain both copyright and Creative Commons licenses. Could you please tell us about that? Great question. Absolutely. So, as I mentioned, Creative Commons works within the realm of copyright law. It's not at odds to say this is under copyright and CC licensed, because technically all works that are CC licensed are under copyright. It is the copyright holder's willingness to share via CC licenses that allow some flexibility with the copyrighted material. So in other words, all works that are CC licensed exist under copyright. So you will see copyright so-and-so or copyright, 2025 or whatever by this person, and then CC licensed under these terms. The CC licenses are just a way to communicate with the world the permissions that are being afforded while the copyright is still in place and under a particular copyright holder. It is not at odds with copyright. It works within copyright. That was such a great question because I remember when I first was trying to understand CC licenses, I had the same question. I thought they were outside of copyright, but no, they are just a way to describe the copyright permissions that the creator is affording others to use with them. It is not at odds with copyright. Fantastic question. Okay, let me see if I can close this, go back to our chooser. So I would just invite you to use the chooser anytime you want to determine what license you want to apply. Or if you know the license that you want to apply already, you can simply type or say, yes, I know which license, and then choose it and copy and paste the license terms to your work. I will say the CC license chooser also has a really valuable optional way to add in attribution. So if you've used other CC licensed works and you're trying to give credit to the creators of those works, you add in the information in the tool and it will generate a license statement that links to the original works as well. So please do test out the license chooser when you can. I hope that it will be really useful to you, although it is unfortunately in English. I think it is translated into some other languages, but not nearly enough. Not Ukrainian, I don't think. Our license deeds should be available in Ukrainian. They are available in a range of languages. Okay, so the only other thing I want to note about the license chooser is that when you add the attribution elements to your licensing statement that gets generated and you copy and paste it, you are abiding by our recommended practices for sharing information. So what we like to say is we recommend TASL. TASL stands for sharing your work that draws on others' works with their titles, authors, sources, and licenses all linked wherever possible. So let me give you a really good page for more information on this if you are interested. These attribution practices are probably, I would say, a happy medium between other attribution practices that we've seen that require a whole lot more information, that make it harder for people to continue practicing attribution versus not sharing enough information to ensure that downstream users can access the original works and the original sources and understand what terms by which the original creator of a work meant to share their works. So we assume that sharing the title, author, source, and license will cover your essential bases. That will be the not necessarily best or the worst, but just our recommended practices for attribution. You'll also see in the license chooser that there's a spot for your date of creation. That is something that we don't have listed in our recommended practices for attribution or TASL, but is also really good to include. So this is something that in our standard courses, our CC certificate courses, we encourage people to apply. And why is that? That is because if you add the original date of creation of a work, then downstream users in the distant future will know when the work expires and enters the public domain. So remember, copyright or CC licenses work within the realm of copyright. You have to know when copyright expires to know when the CC license expires as well. Okay. Hopefully I'm not speeding through this too much. We could have a whole nother course on recommended practices for attribution that gets into some of the more complicated elements of reuse for CC licenses, whether you reuse CC licensed content in adapted formats or unadapted form in terms of like collections. It can get complicated. But for right now, the most important thing to remember is however you are reusing your work, please, or someone else's work, please apply the title, author, source, and license, and links to any of those that you can when you're sharing their works. Okay, so now I want to switch gears a little bit and look at some of the models for open scholarly publishing. I imagine many of you know even more about this than I do, so I'm certainly not going to belabor this, but I want to just note that you are probably familiar with the Directory of Open Access Journals, or DOAJ. This is an incredible resource. So it indexes peer-reviewed open access journals from around the world, and their criteria for journal publishing has become the global gold standard for open access publishing. So DOAJ is a source that we love to recommend. They recommend CC licenses on publications, but they don't necessarily specify which of the 6 CC licenses or the 2 public domain tools to apply. And then PLOS is another open science publisher that covers all scientific disciplines. So every article they publish is open access. They apply CC licenses to the written content, the images, etc. Or if it's not a CC license applied, then it would be a CC0 or maybe one of the open government licenses, which is not as interoperable as CC licenses are, but they are, comparable. So searching through PLOS journals and collections can yield a lot of really useful images or tables or graphs or otherwise. And then I'm sure you are familiar with Zenodo, which is a repository that's organized by discipline. It's a general repository. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute if you're not already using it. But there are also a lot of repositories that are organized by discipline. So I've noted Arxiv here, which is for physics. There are also repositories that are organized for institutions. So one example would be Knowledge at UChicago for the University of Chicago's content. So let me just see. I think the only other things to note here, you probably are familiar with Crossref as well, but Crossref is the world's largest registry of DOIs. So our digital object identifiers and metadata for scholarly research. And unlike other DOI agencies, they encompass all research stakeholders in all geographies. So when a DOI is registered with agencies like Crossref or DataCite, the information automatically enters the global network of content providers and aggregators, making the work more accessible to everyone. Okay, so I wanted to just pause here and ask, and Sophia, I might enlist you to translate this. I was curious what repositories you use in Ukraine and if Zenodo is one of them.
Друга спільнота запитує пані Дженрін, які репозиторії ми використовуємо, і чи Zenodo – це одна із них. No, можливо, maybe I'll start. So we use Zenodo. I just switch on the camera because something's wrong with my connection. So I will better without the camera. But nevertheless, yes, Zenodo. We use Zenodo. We as far as I know, our different institution use Zenodo as a second or the main repository even, and create the community in Zenodo and upload their works. So as for me, I have a practice to upload to conference. We have in different organizations. One of them is the National Antarctic Research Center, and we have every 2 years we have a conference on the Antarctic research. And as far as National Antarctic Research Center of Ukraine hasn't the repository, so they own repository. So we use Zenodo for the abstract of this conference, and also the separate scientists also upload the result of their research, some data, raw data, not abstract or article. Also, according to the international obligation, for instance, with National Antarctic Research Center have the Polarin project. It's a Horizon Europe project. We need to share the data about the research in our Antarctic base and our research vessels. So we upload the raw data in the Zenodo. Regarding the another sphere in Antarctic research, so we also use for instance, our national library, State Scientific and Technical Library, also use Zenodo for different abstract, for upload and share different abstract articles, so on and so forth. And also I saw in Zenodo even journal that have DOI from the Zenodo, not from DataCite, not from Crossref, but just use Zenodo as a free of charge DOI.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. Well, that is great. I'm very glad that you all are using Zenodo. I believe that funders also monitor funded projects on Zenodo as well. So if it's ever, you probably know about this more than I do, but where there are grant funders that require CC licenses or open licenses applied to research outputs, then Zenodo is a great spot to upload them because funders can kind of track and monitor them. Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you for sharing that. I know we are running out of time a little bit. I really appreciate folks staying on even late, beyond the time that we expected. I will rush through the rest of this and then take your questions. If you are seeking open educational resources, there are a range of wonderful repositories available to you. I know many are not in Ukrainian. I believe that let me just double check. LibreText, let me see if I can get a link for you all. LibreText has a a wonderful translation option. So I know there are works in Ukrainian, a lot of works in Ukrainian on LibreText, but there are so many other wonderful resources out there for open educational resources. I'll share a bunch of links in my slides after this. Similarly, I really quickly wanted to make sure folks were aware that there are high quality, open, digitized museum collections that are available online as well. So if you have patrons that want to investigate certain elements of cultural heritage, there's actually a really wonderful survey of over 1,600 museums that have opened access to their digital collections. Here we go. I'm going to post, I believe the spreadsheet captures it. This is from an Open Glam survey, and it shares some of the really wonderful resources at your disposal for anybody who may be interested in more of the cultural heritage elements. Okay, that is it for now. I do want to share a few links. So if you forget everything that I said from this presentation, you will know where to go to find out more. So I just posted the links to the CC license chooser again. You can also read so much in our frequently asked questions page. This will help you as you get more deeply involved in reuse of CC licenses or applying CC licenses or trying to understand what other considerations may be at play with your works. So I definitely recommend the frequently asked questions page. And then if you want a deep dive into some of our training, we have this wonderful CC certificate program. It's a 10-week online course. Don't worry, I'm not asking you to take a 10-week online course right now. I'm sure you have much higher priorities, but all of the reading content is openly licensed and available online. So you are welcome to dive into the different units on, copyright, on CC licenses, on reuse of CC licenses, and other considerations at your leisure. Okay, I am going to turn to your questions right now, and I first just want to say thank you so much for being with me today, and also taking the time to ask the questions in the chat. Let me see. I'm going to stop sharing right now and turn to the questions that you posed in advance. But again, thank you so much for your time and patience. Okay, so let me see. I'm going to take as many of these as I can. And if you have additional questions that come up, please don't hesitate to add them to the chat. Okay, the first question is it possible to obtain a license for an article, for example? Yes. So if you are the creator, if you're the author of that article, and you own the copyright to your work, you didn't, grant it to your institution under your employment contract, for example, then yes, you can go to the CC license chooser and apply the license that you choose to your article. How does Creative Commons licensing affect the commercialization of research? Ooh, great question. If data is obtained with public funding, does a CC BY-NC, non-commercial license, limit potential collaboration between a university and business? Excellent question. Okay, so we like to say that, we recommend people apply the CC license that works best for them and for downstream users, maximum ability to reuse a work. So we say in other ways of describing this, apply the CC license that has the most permissive terms, or add on the fewest restrictions that are necessary for the work to be used in the ways that you want. So if you apply a CC license to your work that has a non-commercial element, that may limit the collaboration that's possible between your university and a business, for example, if the business wants to make commercial profit off of their adaptation of your work. They may be able to demonstrate that they're not intending for commercial gain in their reuse of your work, in which case that's fine. So CC licenses can affect the commercialization of research. How should a database be licensed if it contains objects with different ownership rights? That's such a great question, and that gets into some of the more complicated considerations around CC licenses. So I will say two things. First, the spirit of CC licenses is about sharing. It's about setting up downstream users or the public with the tools for success, the best tools for success. So downstream users need to know what permissions someone is sharing their works under. Ideally, the CC license is a way to describe the permissions with which the work is shared in the easiest ways to understand as possible. Just one second, sorry. So when you have different different license terms within a data set, or when you have content that is it is under copyright under a data set, you ideally will be allowing downstream users the ability to know what permissions apply to what works. You always want to make sure, no matter what you're doing, that downstream users, people who use the content, know how to abide by the permissions so they don't infringe copyright. So the interesting thing about data sets is a lot of time, content in data sets is not actually an original work of creative expression, so it's not eligible for copyright in the first place. It may be a factor idea, or perhaps there are different owners of the datum or the data within the data set, and they have different terms. Your goal is to make it as clear as possible what permissions apply to what content. The interesting thing is when you apply a CC license to a data set, you are applying those permissions to only the creative work of original expression you put forward. So your CC license only applies to the creative work of curating the data set. It doesn't change the permissions within the data set. I don't know if that makes sense, but it is considered kind of like a thin copyright license over the curated collection of the work inside it. So ideally, you are making the work inside it very clear how that work should be reused or not reused. And you are setting up downstream users for success so they don't infringe copyright. Ideally, you're not using copyrighted content in your data set in a way that would set up downstream users for copyright infringement. Okay, I see a question. Good afternoon. Please tell me when and how we can get a translation of the presentation and Q&A session into Ukrainian. Thank you. Great question.
It may be me. Sorry, Jennryn, it may be me. Дивіться, я хотіла допомагати, коли були б живі питання, не англійською, а живі українською питання, я могла б їх перекласти для тих, хто не може сформулювати українською питання. Власне, запис, ось цей запис, плюс презентація, вона буде на сайті бібліотеки КПІ. Мені потрібно добу для того, щоб перекласти презентацію. Ось, ми спробуємо зробити субтитри, але я не впевнена, що це вийде. В будь-якому випадку буде перекладена презентація українською мовою і детальний опис про те, що сьогодні говорили, включно з відповідями на питання українською мовою. Тобто питання-відповіді буде українською перекладено і буде на сайті нашої бібліотеки. І в наших соціальних мережах, але це десь доба-дві для того, щоб ми встигли це зробити. Дякую. Thank you, Jennryn. So I told that we need 1 or 2 days for translation your presentation and the Q&A session in the written form into Ukrainian. So we need up to 2 days. So like that. So you may continue.
You're very fast. That's an amazing turnaround for the translation. That's great. Okay, just one other quick note on the last question. Are there Creative Commons tools for such mixed data sets? Just the CC licenses and the public domain tools. So those are the ways or the tools with which we are sharing data sets right now. I will note that we're in exploratory conversations about additional tools that we may be able to engage with in the future that would allow for additional considerations, especially in terms of AI ingestion of data sets. So more on that soon. Okay, the next question is, do standard licenses, such as CC by SA, allow the use of data for training commercially neutral networks? And how can authors protect their work? I'm not entirely sure what you mean by commercial neutral networks. Oh, sorry, neural networks, commercial neural networks. Um, I so I need a little bit of clarification, but I'm gonna try to take a stab at answering this. So our standard licenses currently allow the content of the licensed works, so the licensed works, to be reused in whatever way people want. So unless there is a no derivatives license applied to the work, it can be reused in whatever means necessary or desired. So training, yes, for AI training. I should say all of our CC licenses allow for AI training currently, in as far as we know, without court cases being settled yet. So currently, from what we are seeing in different jurisdictions, or most jurisdictions, training on data sets is allowed under an exception to copyright. So in some countries, it's under a research exception. In the US, it's under the fair use exception. But in these cases, that kind of training of content, whether it's copyrighted content, like all rights reserved copyright content, or whether it's CC licensed content, that training is allowed currently, at least in as far as we know. Once the court cases are settled, which will take years, we may have a different understanding. But currently, I believe that these licenses, they don't restrict AI training, or what I'm assuming you mean by training commercial neural networks. If I'm off on my understanding of commercial neural networks, just let me know, because that's not a term that I am familiar with. I will say that there is also kind of a perception among, from what we've seen, AI companies, that any CC license implies consent for reuse, because CC licenses are intended for sharing. I understand that there is that maybe perception, but in terms of training right now, it actually doesn't matter which of the CC licenses you apply, or if you apply a CC license at all, because all copyrighted content, and therefore CC license content, can be ingested by, these large language models, and I think what you're calling neural networks, under an exception to copyright. Okay, how can authors protect their work? That's a great question. So if I'm interpreting this question correctly, I would say CC licenses, in as far as we know right now, are not a way to protect your work, because currently all works are being ingested under a carve-out or exception to copyright. I will say authors may be able to protect their work through what other organizations are doing as an intervention in this this kind of training process. So there are organizations that have figured out how to block bots, or I think the robotext blocking for bots. So there's that option. I know there are policy interventions at play. So I believe the EU is like far more advanced with exploring exploring potential limits in terms of policy and hopefully legal ramifications for AI ingestion in certain areas. But I don't think that is settled yet either. I think this is still kind of a new terrain, so we're eager to see how the policy interventions may work, how these different you know, bot blockers work or can adapt, and so on. I think there are, because we work in this ecosystem of knowledge transfer, there are a number of other organizations that are exploring interventions just as we are, but they're all beyond the realm of copyright. We've seen that copyright currently is not, the ideal tool to address using data for training. Okay, that was a very long-winded response. Now let me see. Which license is best to choose for a scholarly journal? Category B. I'm not sure what category B
I just explained, I'm sorry, I just explained, we have in our legislation two journal is the category A and B. A, it's all journal that indexing in Scopus and Web of Science. B, it's high quality, also high quality journals, but without indexing in Scopus and Web of Science, but the journal very wants to be in category A. So it's pretty the same that quality journals that indexing in Scopus and Web of Science, so the same.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So I would say, we still recommend licensing your work with as flexible permissions as you feel comfortable doing so. So we like to, and I think we just had a publication on this most recently about data anyway, but we say if you can CC license your work under the CC BY license, the attribution license, that allows the most flexible downstream use of your work possible. And it also allows others to reuse your work in a range of different ways, which often increases citation counts for the actual authors. So I assume that would be good for, category B scholarly journals. But we recognize that one license will not meet all of your different needs. So let's say you're a scholarly journal and you have a range of CC licenses within your journal. You would want to consider if some of those licenses have the non-commercial restriction. If so, you would want to license your journal under the non-commercial terms so that others know the permissions with which the content's being shared in terms of non-commercial. There's a really good FAQ question about this in our FAQ page if you're curious for more. Okay. What is the mechanism for implementing these licenses? I know we covered that in the training, but you copy and paste the text from the license chooser directly onto your work. You don't have to register your work. You don't have to pay anyone for a CC license. It's all freely available. Okay, is it possible for Ukrainian publishers to obtain such licenses and how? Absolutely. All of our licenses and public domain tools are dedicated to the public domain, so you can use them whenever you want. And you don't have to do anything to obtain a license. You can literally either write out the license and the terms yourself, or you can copy and paste the icons and the text from our open license chooser or CC license chooser. What are the global and Ukrainian trends in the development of open science? What a great question. So I am not on our open science team at Creative Commons, but I do know that they are very interested in one, seeing how CC BY licensed data is spurring more sharing, more innovation in open science. I know they're also very interested in exploring what they're calling modular science, this is not a global trend. This is just from like the CC perspective, but that means making sure that the attribution elements, the license elements of each part of a scientific work are shared next to that scientific work. So for example, if you have a table or a graph inside your species, oh, go ahead. Okay. If you have a table or a graph inside your CC licensed publication, that would have its own license that would travel with it when reused in the future, even outside of the publication. So that is something that they're exploring. But yeah, I would say I would be happy to put you in touch with our open science team for any additional global trends in the development of open science. It's outside of my expertise, but I would love to connect you to our expert colleagues. Okay, let's see. What risks exist when adopting a license? Yeah, so first, I would say you are sharing your work with the global public. So I personally don't think there is as much risk as we initially anticipate. I think people are used to a scholarly publishing model that starts from the premise that you need to, reserve all rights for yourself. I don't think there are as many risks when you CC license your content. I will say the assumption that I think we talked about, or the perception that a lot of AI platforms have had in the past, is that CC licensing implies permission for reuse. So they have ingested CC licensed content first for AI training, but we've also seen that all copyrighted content has been ingested by AI platforms. So I don't think that there's actually more. Well, I'm not a lawyer, but it does not seem at this point like there is significantly more risk in CC licensing your work versus having it under copyright, because everything's getting hoovered up by the AI platforms anyway. You're welcome. Okay. The only other risk I can think of in adopting a CC license is if you change your mind in the future, because the licenses are irrevocable. If you decide, first, I want to CC by NCSA my work. So I want to apply a really restrictive license to my work. But then you get more comfortable with CC licenses. Then in the future, you actually can add a CC by or other license to your work and reshare it. But there is a risk that people will find the original licensed work and get confused. It's not a big risk, but it is there. So I guess knowing that they're irrevocable is what I want to emphasize here. So yeah, let's see. Creative Commons licenses and copyright, how do they interact? We've addressed this. Copyright is the area of intellectual property law under which all creative works of original expression or original works of creative expression fall. CC licenses only work within the realm of copyright. How are Creative Commons licenses used in Ukrainian universities? That's a great question. So we've worked with some Ukrainian colleagues in the past, and I know they've been applied to, I believe, collections and individual publications. I would have to look into more examples in particular, but I believe, to the best of my knowledge, they're used in a range of ways. I don't know like which license is more used or not. Okay. Creative Commons in the work of a scientific library. What are the specifics? So I think we touched on this in a little bit in the training in terms of applying a CC license and then uploading it to, say, Zenodo and making sure that the work has a DOI and so on. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that we didn't touch on in the training to answer that question. We talked about data sets and CC licenses. So yeah, I would say you will probably see more CC0 public domain dedications in some of the data sets used in science, but beyond that, I think that's about it for right now. If there's anything else you're asking about in terms of a scientific library use of CC licenses, just let us know. Okay, open licenses. What are the advantages and what is the process for adopting them? Yeah, I think we answered that in the training. Are there specialized databases with open licenses? There are lots of databases with open licenses. So a perfect example of this would be Wikipedia. Everything that you see on Wikipedia is CC licensed. So there are lots of collections of data within Wikipedia, and they all have, yeah, an open license applied. But beyond Wikipedia, I mean, there are troves of databases with CC licenses. Can private universities use works labeled with non-commercial, the non-commercial license to create resources? For example, lecture materials in internal LMS systems. Great question. So this again gets back to the use case instead of the user when it comes to non-commercial elements or our non-commercial license. So if the private university can demonstrate that they are not making profit off of the lecture, even when it's housed within the internal LMS, then they can use non-commercial works to create resources. But if they are intending for commercial gain from those lectures, and they can't kind of disaggregate that, then they cannot use the non-commercial licensed works. But I like the question that you're raising here because it starts to look at what it means to use work internally within a university system versus externally. And really the licenses don't differentiate between, internal to one classroom versus the global public. It is all about the use, and any reuser is considered kind of like a reuser of the license, whether it's public or private or not. I think that's right. Yeah. Okay. That is all the questions. I want to just see if there are any other questions that emerge in the chat. So for those of you who have any questions that came up as I was talking, I would love to hear them. Otherwise, I will close this training.
So, Jennryn, thank you very much for your very positive, very interesting presentation. Yes, we have one question in the chat. Yep, after that.
Oh, great. Yeah, thank you too. I so appreciate the chance to do these trainings. So the question is, if I put NC, can I use my work commercially? Yes, you as the license holder have all of the copyright rights. And if you add NC to your work, you can still use your work commercially. You can still make profit off of your work. You are just telling downstream users they cannot intend for commercial profit. All right.
So thank you once again. It's a really very with communication, very positive communication. So thank you for that. It's amazing. Yes, it's really amazing, and thank you very much for you accept our invitation. Maybe we can just continue our communication, not very often, but nevertheless, I understood that you are very busy, but it would be great if you can continue some communication, some collaboration. It would be great. And after this presentation, after our event, I would like to ask you to share with me the presentation for translation.
Absolutely. Thank you again so much for your patience and your flexibility and the opportunity for this. And I look forward to being in touch. I will share the presentation slides right after this. Thank you all.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Bye. Дякую всім, хто приєднався. Після нашого вебінару ми викладемо у нас на сайті, у нас на наших соціальних мережах.
Так, то все воно буде українською мовою також в перекладі. Дякую дуже, що приєдналися. Ще раз перепрошуємо за затримку, але дуже дякую, що були з нами до кінця.
Дякуємо.
Дякуємо.
Thank you.
Дякуємо. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.